There is a new book out there that captures some of the best stories of Ralph Kiner, Hall of Fame player and a staple of the Mets game since the birth of the franchise. The book is called Down in the Corner. It's by Howie Carpet and co-authored by our guest tonight, Mark Rosenman. Mark, good to see you once again, buddy.
Always great to see you, Steve. Love being here.
Well, it's good to really talk a little bit about Ralph Kiner, and I think that this is a chance for a lot of Mets fans out there to revisit a chapter of Mets history that has kind of been overshadowed by all of the championship games and what have you. And what Kiner did was he created this show that was part late-night talk show, part baseball post-game show, but it looked like it was done in the basement of an like some sort of an unfinished basement.
Absolutely, part Wayne's World.
But ultimately, very much Wayne's World. But it was really a beloved show, wasn't it?
Absolutely. And the interesting thing about Ralph is, especially for me, I mean, Ralph Kiner took me from 2 years old to elementary school, junior high school, college, marriage, and children, and he was still there. And that's why so many people of my age have such a connection with Ralph.
And Ralph Kiner says that the Mets hired him because he had a losing experience in his playing days in Pittsburgh. But I tell you what, they found a winning formula with Kiner as a broadcaster because he was a part of the Mets broadcasts for 6+ decades in some form or another. I mean, it seemed like they really found a gem in Ralph Kiner, and what he really provided everybody, at least at the outset, was what some people consider the very first post-game show on television.
Absolutely. You know, people of this generation are used to turning on ESPN and seeing every single highlight there is. You would watch the game, and then there would be no replays, not even on the news. Later on, in the later decades, it might be a sports extra, but that was about it. But Ralph had the opportunity in the 60s. Players would come on. Guys like Tim Harkness, who would maybe hit 4 home runs in his career, got to sit in with Ralph and look at the monitor and see his home run, and that never happened back then.
That's right. So there was no replays at that point. So this was their only chance to see video of themselves, and Ralph had kind of a cachet. I mean, he had Tom Seaver, Willie Mays. I mean, these guys are Pete Rose. They were tripping over themselves to get on Ralph Kiner's show.
Absolutely. If you just went into the locker room and said Ralph, by the time you said Ralph, the guy was already down the hallway into the studio. But he was the most unassuming person as well. You would not know by being in a room with him for 5 minutes that he was a Hall of Famer, that this person dated every legendary Hollywood star as well.
This would be like, if we were to try to equate this with modern era, this would be like Derek Jeter has a post-game show and invites you to come on the show.
Yes, but the thing is, you can't even equate it to that, because back then, Ralph was a star when there was no mass media. People that lived outside of Pittsburgh still knew of Ralph Kiner, yet there wasn't ESPN, there wasn't the Major League Baseball package, so Ralph still had this persona perpetuated throughout all of America with no multimedia.
That's the thing. TV wasn't as big as it is right now.
There were no games of the week.
Yeah, exactly. So this was an opportunity for these guys to appear on television, to kind of raise their profile. And think about this. I mean, back then, you may have known what your favorite player had said in the postgame based on what was written the very next day in the paper, but you never actually see the words coming out of his mouth.
It made stars, and it made the not-so-big stars come into your living room. Danny Frisella, who happened to be one of my favorite Mets, and I don't even know why Danny Frisella was one of my favorite Mets. If you asked a lot of Met fans,
more random, right?
But there was something about Danny Frisella that I loved. So I wanted him to be part of the book. He obviously passed away. I spoke to his widow, and she said that whenever Danny would be on Kiner's Corner, they lived in Queens, and the kids in the apartment building would be waiting on the stoop to talk to him about his appearance on Kiner's Corner.
Not about the game that he just played.
Exactly.
He's a Major League Baseball player.
Exactly. That's how big Kiner's Corner actually was.
And of course, he would give these nice gifts too. Some of the gifts he would give would be like a watch, right. $50 gift certificates.
The very first year, the Mets sponsor was Nash Rambler, and they gave out matchboxes of the Nash Rambler. The first year, it was a very eclectic show as well. They had Buddy Hackett and Phil Forster, 2 comedians on, and when they gave Buddy Hackett the Nash Rambler, he goes, "That's why it gets such great great gas mileage.
Perfect.
Right.
And that's the thing, you know, I mean, you're talking about athletes at the time that were making, what, $80,000 a year? So $50 or maybe a gift certificate to a steak dinner, you know, would be the equivalent of about giving somebody $1,300 per show today.
Dwight Gooden said that his rookie year, he lived on those Getty gas certificates. He said that it felt so great going to the gas pump and not having to pay. This is Dwight Gooden.
Yeah, absolutely. A guy who made plenty of money in his time.
Right.
But I think another thing that made Korner, I don't know, one of the reasons everybody loved Ralph Korner was because of his Kornerisms. Yogi Berra had Yogiisms. Korner had Kornerisms. He once called, well, Gary Carter, Gary Cooper, Tim McCarver, Ted MacArthur. He would butcher promo reads. There were some other memorable ones out there, though, right?
Oh, tons. And Howie and I went out of our way. We didn't do it in a mocking way because
it's with respect, but
it was
with
respect.
love.
It was with love, absolutely, and that's what made Ralph so great. Because Ralph didn't care when he made a mistake. And the first tape that I actually found, which was maybe the genesis of the book, was opening day 1985, and I found a Betamax tape and I put it in and I fast forwarded it to the end, and it was the day that Gary Carter, his first game as a Met, hit a home run. He introduces, it's Mookie and Gary, and he introduces Gary Carter as Gary Cooper. And obviously the producer in his earpiece says, "It's Carter." And he goes, "Gary Cooper?" He goes, "What am I thinking?" He goes, "I'll tell you what I'm thinking." And he has this whole stream of consciousness on the air. He says, "I'm thinking of Gary Cooper because Glenn Close sang the national anthem, and Glenn Close was in this movie, The Natural, which reminded me of Pride of the Yankees, which reminded me of Gary Cooper." So, like, he didn't care he made a mistake. He explained why he made the mistake.
Yeah, it was like an audible blog post.
Absolutely.
Before blogs were even a thing, more or less.
Right.
I mean, I heard about Casey Stengel brought the set down at one point. What happened
Well,
here?
the interesting thing with Casey is Casey would talk so much that they used to cut for commercial, and Casey would still be talking. They'd come back from commercial, and Casey would still be talking about the same subject, and they kept it going. So at the end of one show, Casey just gets going and going, and the segment ends, and Casey gets up while they're still filming, and he had the mic and everything, still attached to him, and the wires back then. You can imagine what a studio was in '62. He walks, he trips over a wire that pulls the entire set down live on air, crashing all over the place. It's one of the famous moments of Korner's Corner.
Well, the book is filled with stories just like this. The book is called Down on the Corner. It is by Mark Rosenman and Howie Carpin. Mark, we want to thank you so much for joining us today to talk a little bit about it.
My pleasure. Always love being here, Steve.